to a system disturbance which occurred on the transmission network at 5:49 this morning. The utility firm said that its engineers were working to identify the hitch in efforts to restore power supply to the national grid. The incident happens just as the country grapples with an upsurge in water levels in key hydroelectricity dams sparked by heavy rains and flooding in parts of the country. Uganda is also reported to be facing a national outage too, indicating an interlinkage between the two neighboring countries' national grid. Now let's join Lillian Kiare in Ndenderu for more details. Lillian, good morning. How are you? Good afternoon, actually. Just give us an update of what is happening, especially with this particular outage. We know that engineers have identified the hitch as it is right now.
I'm in Dumberi village, which is in Kiambu County, where this tower you can see behind me is which blew up last night, and we are being told it's because a stimulator and a conductor came off, which caused a power outage at this particular point. So here in Dumberi is where this tower usually supplies. It's called a high voltage tower transmission line, which supplies power which comes from Olkaria to Nairobi. So we came here where we understand that these particular incidents happened a few minutes past to 6 o'clock, and we have been joined by engineer Koril, who is going to be telling us what particularly happened, when did this thing happen, and what can Kenyans expect.
We had a failure on one of the insulators, which looks like this, where I'm standing next to, and when that insulator snapped, then the conductor came onto the tower and we had a fault on the line. And that fault is what we are still investigating, but it caused a cascaded events which led to the blackout, which we faced this morning.
To a typical Kenyan, they might not understand what the insulator is or the conductor is. You can break it down to us to get to understand what exactly you mean by these terms.
Yeah, an insulator is what you're seeing on my left hand. And what an insulator does is it provides insulation between the structure and the conductor. The conductor, which is normally connected to the insulator on the lower side, is normally energized at very high voltage. And for it to be able to pass on power, it has to stay it has to be isolated from the ground or from the tower so that it doesn't cause a fault. When the insulation is compromised, that is what causes a fault, and that is what switches off the line.
Tell us more about this transmission of the power plant from here. We gather that it's one of the main high voltage transmission power plant that usually now gives or transmits power to other areas. Tell us more about this particular transmission line.
This transmission line forms one of the most critical sections of the network, which supplies Nairobi and its environs with bulk energy from the rest of the grid. And when we mean the grid, it is from the grid has several power plants connected to it, and from the power plants, that is where we supply in bulk to the load centers, which are the towns, like Nairobi in this case. And from there, that is when we step down up to the level of where we get to the customer on the low voltage transformer.
When do we expect this process to be done, and what can Kenyans hope for? Are we going to be able to manage to ensure that power is back in the country in a few hours?
This transmission line alone will not cause the rest of the country not to be in a blackout. Our engineers at the control center are working very hard to ensure that the rest of the grid can come back even as this line as we carry out the repairs. But we expect to finish the repairs before the end of the close of the day.
Thank you, Major Koril. I'm also joined Engineer Koril. I'm actually also joined by the chief pilot, who is going to be doing a very critical process, because they're going to be carrying out like the conductor and bringing some helicopters to be able to put the insulator back on top. Chief pilot.
Okay. Kenya Power has a helicopter, and its role is to do power line patrols and power line maintenance like what we are doing now. When we got this problem in the morning, I was given the information that the line we had a problem between Olkaria and Dandora. This can be detected by the controller, the Nairobi Control Center. Nairobi Control Center gave me information in the morning that we have a problem. Now the first thing to do is to get a helicopter to follow the line, low level, following the line. So when we reach this particular area, we noticed the conductor had come down. The insulator had disconnected from the tower, and it came down. After noticing that, we had to go back to Dandora to go and bring tools and equipment. One of the equipment we brought is this insulator, which came down. After coming with the insulator, now we are taking up the line. The conductor which came down, we are attaching to this insulator and take up the line up to that cross arm. And from there now, we will have the power. The reason why we are using helicopter is because of areas where they are not accessible. These high voltage lines, they pass areas where they are not accessible, sometimes are not accessible by vehicles. So the main reason we are using helicopter is to save time and to access those areas like here.
Dibal, note that this is particularly a very bad time to not be having electricity, noting that some Kenyans have already been put on lockdown and a lot of Kenyans are working from home. So we will be finding out more and actually recording to see how the whole process comes out, and we are going to be coming back to you in the subsequent bulletin. Back to you, Dibal.